Like, people have done so much out here, all in the name of trying to get validation and feeling that validation from particular individuals or from particular parties, that you could basically say that there are entire industries that are built off of validation. Like, think of the cosmetic industry, think of luxury goods. A lot of those things are very based on validation just by trying to show
the royal penis is clean, Your Highness.
Welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is a man who might find it hard to breathe if you've got that asthma. He is also a man whose sickness for the thickness prevents him from skinny dipping. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. I have come here because some of y'all care less and it's hurting you. And, weirdly enough, people used to talk about how being careless wasn't a good thing. And now the same people, plus the ones that were told that being careless wasn't a good thing, are telling you to care less. And they believe that it's a good thing. So now I have to be the one to come and tell you that the idea of care less is not a good thing for you. Like, it's weird. But at the same time, like, it's because what you were told back when you were a kid, like being careless isn't a good thing. It's different from what I'm actually talking about, even though it does sound like the same exact thing. And I will get into it in a little bit. But, first of all, before we do any of that, a massive thank you to you for listening. I hope you listen all the way till the end. And I hope you either learn something, pick up something, or get entertained at the very least, And while you're at it, should you like the episode or an episode or not like it, or just have some thoughts and comments or feedback or even a potential like topic idea or something of the sort, then you can always hit me up via the socials, which is at the Breakdown_podcast on IG, at the Breakdown Podcast on Facebook, and at BagakaTheD on X or Twitter, if that's what you'd like to call it. And I'd be more than happy to read some of your comments and, respond to the feedback given and, also get some potentially interesting topic ideas. But all in all, like I said, thank you so much for listening. I hope you listen all the way till the end. And I have something on caring, or at least the idea of caring less, which I need to discuss. But before I can get into any of that, I first want to discuss an issue that I had mentioned in a previous episode. But before I can tell you exactly what the issue is, I need to tell you guys of a particularly interesting story. Now, there is a man in China who sent his family's savings to a streamer so she would call him, and I kid you the hell not, this is actually not something that I would make up, bro. Like, I kid you the absolute hell not. Dude spent his family's savings sending it to a streamer just so that she could call him bro. And you would think that if the guy's doing that, probably the savings isn't that much money, so on and so forth. But actually, the amount of money that was spent just so that she could call him bro wasn't actually particularly little money. It's not like it was $1,000. No, it was a little bit more than that. It was actually to the near equivalent of $550,000 just so that a streamer could call him bro. Now, I'm just gonna read the quick caption that came with this story real quick. So it says, and I quote, "A man in China, surnamed Hong, spent over 4 million yuan or $550,000 tipping a live streaming anchor to hear her call him bro. Draining his family savings, he turned to stealing copper from his family's hardware business, amassing 2.3 million yuan to fund his obsession. Financially ruined and surviving on plain buns, Hong confessed to over 40 thefts after a police investigation." End quote. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm one of those guys that's ready to make jokes about this, but damn, like, just so that you can get broad, like, is the friend zone that hard to get into nowadays? Like, real talk. Like, have we gotten that bad as a society that we've gone to a point where a young man, just to get that sort of like closeness with someone that they idolize, is willing to use up the family's savings just so that she could call him bro? Yeah, this goes back to something that I was discussing in a previous episode in relation to validation. Now, I did talk about the idea of validation and how it is something that has made billionaires, but it's also been something that has killed people. It's something that has pushed people to go and buy Mercedes G-classes, but at the very same time has made men spend thousands, hundreds of thousands, sometimes even millions, just trying to impress people at a club. And when I spoke about it, I was talking about it from a relationship sense and how validation or lack thereof can build on insecurities, or basically is like the foundation for insecurities. And if you do not have it sorted out, it can actually cause a shit ton of problems, even beyond just the relationship. And this is a very clear example of it. Like, this is a very clear example of someone who has had the whole issue of not getting proper validation, and as a result, because of that hunger for the validation from a particular person, was basically willing to, and I kid you the hell not, risk it all just so that she could get some of that validation. Like, people actually do not realize how important validation is up until they actually look at what it's made people do. Like, there are women who have fucked hundreds of dudes who would have probably fucked maybe one or two if one of them would have just said, I love you. There are dudes that have made club owners rich simply because they did not get that validation from the guys or from a couple of babes that they are the shit. Like, there are entire families that are dysfunctional because one man was not shown proper love and validated for having their emotions while they were a kid. People do not understand the weight and or magnitude that validation carries to an individual, particularly from the right people, whoever it is that the right people are. Sometimes it's a family member, sometimes it's a sibling, sometimes it's a boss, sometimes it's a manager, sometimes it's a partner, sometimes it's friends. Like, people have done so much out here, all in the name of trying to get validation and feeling that validation from particular individuals or from particular parties, that you could basically say that there are entire industries that are built off of validation. Like, think of the cosmetic industry, think of luxury goods. A lot of those things are very based on validation, just by trying to show that you've got the best shit or you look better than the next person. People hear stories like this and they're usually like, oh, this is an issue of loneliness. Oh, we have a loneliness epidemic that's going on in so many places around the world. And, you could say that to a certain degree, but this is more a validation issue than it is a loneliness issue. And there are some people that even came out in the comment section to say that. Like, this isn't just loneliness, this is just an issue of validation. There's a very good chance that if this guy got some validation in his life from a couple of people here and there, there's a very good chance he probably wouldn't have done this shit. And this is a very clear sign of what validation or lack thereof can make someone do. So identifying what it is that your insecurities are and where that sense of validation is probably best placed will probably help you so that you do not end up in as many situations where your insecurities make you do dumb shit like this. All in the name of validation. All in the name of trying to get the approval of people that barely give a fuck about you. Because I feel like this streamer will probably remember this guy for the rest of their lives or for a certain period of time just because of the money and not because the guy was a particularly good dude. But then again, some people would just say that the guy moved from bro to broke in a couple of seconds, and that's also right. And you can't exactly run away from that fact. But at the same time, like, with 550k, I feel like you could go to most OnlyFans models, and mind you, like, some of these are adult stars. Like, you could go to most OnlyFans babes and basically have them talk to you every day for like maybe even a year in some instances. But then again, like I said, validation from a single individual can mean so much to someone, to the point of spending $550,000. Although, with all that said and done, I am going to leave it at that and move it on to our main topic of this episode. Now, over the past couple of years, I've been hearing certain statements that people have given in terms of how, you can have a really good relationship with someone. And one of the things that I get to hear a lot is either side, male or female, busy talking about how, make sure your partner loves you more than you love them. And it's been something that I've debated before, whether it's men loving women more or women loving men more. And I'm very quick to shut whatever justifications people like to give down, just mostly because I think a lot of what they say and just the belief system itself is garbage. So when I stumbled across a video where a guy was busy talking about tips on how to, create this sort of, situation for guys, I found it particularly interesting because not only is it something that will probably be full of a bunch of BS that I need to debunk, but it might also give some insight as to why it is that people might actually believe in this sort of idea of loving or caring about someone or being with someone that makes them think that it's actually right. Now, I'm going to play the clip, then I can get into my thoughts on the entire thing. And, first of all, it is stitched from a different clip elsewhere, so it might sound a little bit interesting at first, then there's gonna be a bit of like a switch up somewhere in the middle, but all in all, it should kind of encapsulate everything that I am talking about and everything that I do intend on talking about. So, without further ado,
we were just fine.
Babe, quit that fucking nigga.
Switches her.
No, quit that shit.
It's not me who wanted you.
Well done, soldier. We're proud of you. Mission accomplished. So here is how you can get a woman to have this exact reaction. Number one, always remember, mtu anakuanga na power kwa relationship is the one who cares the least. So make sure at all cost you are the one who cares the least. Kwa sababu akienda, you don't care. Akibaki, you don't care. Life yako inaendelea. And number two, make sure you give her the best treatment. Make sure the relationship inaenda vizuri. Now while the relationship iko at its peak, kila kitu ina flow vizuri, kila kitu inaenda vizuri, ghost. That way atakuwa nasema you are the best ex ashaikuwa na yeye, you are the best guy ashaikuwa na yeye, kwa sababu kufanya makosa yoyote. Na every time akifikiria the relationship atakuwa nafikiria zile vitu mzuri uko unafanyia at its peak. And this is how even you, a mere mortal, unaweza pata mdemi yote kwa na reactions.
All of a sudden now I am begging you to call, I am begging you to show up.
I know the shit that you're going through.
To the soldier alitumwa, well done. Na wewe soldier nakupatia mission next, please usiniangushe ukienda kwa field. Sawa? All the best. Na ukumbuke streets ni cold. There's no love kwa streets. Sawa? Streets haina love. So sikue attach hapa hivi nje. Streets ni cold. Soldier.
Okay. So it was a clip of a babe busy talking about how she was with the ex and, the guy at some point started acting some type of way and dropped her and, she thought things were great and dude basically came through to talk about how great of a situation that is for a guy and, being like the best ex she ever had, blah, blah. And then I'm not gonna lie, this shit just sounds sad. Not what the babe is going through, but what the dude is saying. And don't get me wrong, it's not like wanting to be the most memorable person that your ex had or that you were with someone isn't something that a lot of people like. It's just that it sounds like it's just coming from a point of pain. It's like you wish you were the most memorable person. So these are the tips on being a piece of shit, but a piece of shit that is so memorable that your ex wishes that you were still with them. Like, I find this shit to be particularly weird. But, maybe it's just a me thing, but I'm more of a healthy relationships person, so I would much rather that I treat you as best as I can, such that even though things didn't work out between us, even though you move on to someone else, you'll still say that I treated you well. Like, I feel like there's already enough shit people out here. Like, I feel like the market's already fucked up as is. Like, not like everyone is messed up or anything, but I feel like there's a lot of people in the dating market that are still trying to recover from trauma, that have gone through a bunch of shit, that just inflict a bunch of shit. And, they might be reacting, they might be acting. So just being a good partner in and of itself is enough for you to actually be a memorable individual. But, maybe it's just a me thing and, maybe I'm not the one that, fully understands how things are supposed to be. But all in all, like, looking at what the guy's tips were, like, you wait until the relationship is at its peak, then you just ghost the babe. Why? Like, because you just want to be memorable enough. Like, I feel like you can do that when you're flirting with people, but when it comes to, like, dating and being in a relationship, there's no need for it. If you really want to be with a person, then why are you looking at ghosting them when things are great between the two of you? Like, why not actually be there whether things are bad or good. Like, isn't that what good long-term relationships are made of? Like, why ghost the babe and then come back? Because if you're the type to do that, then you're an unreliable partner. And if you're an unreliable partner, then how the hell does the second rule that he brought up of you make sure you treat her as great as possible actually apply? Because you're not treating her as great as possible, you're just treating her well enough to a point. Of which, if that's the case, then why get into a relationship with someone if you're not going to treat them as best as you can? Like, am I making sense here? Maybe it's just me that's just thinking of shit like this, but why take it to that point? Why take it to the point where it's like you are now trying to come up with a certain game just so that you can become memorable to an ex? Wouldn't it be better if you guys moved on and you don't think about each other, you don't worry about each other, and you get to have better lives with other people instead of having to think about how memorable the last person was? Like, how deprived of you of affection or validation from other people that you want your ex to miss you? Like, shouldn't you be focusing on being with the next person or being with someone else or your current person or whatever? Like, why are you so hell-bent on having your ex see you as the most memorable person ever? Like, I feel like that's such an ego pull. As it sounds like you were just someone that was just hurt previously, and because babes didn't give a shit about you, or you think babes didn't give a shit about you back then, you're just trying to inflict the same level of pain you felt onto other people, which is just sad. Just sad, to say the least. But anyways, I feel like I kind of went into a tangent there, because actually my main issue was that rule number 1, which was make sure that you're the one that cares the least, or you're the one that loves her the least. Which, when I think about it, it kind of goes back to the whole thing where you listen to people busy talking about what makes a good relationship, and it's like, oh, the man has to love you more than you love him, or the woman has to love you more than you love her. And I usually hear these things and I consider them to be quite frankly bullshit. And my justification for it has been, more than one reason, but the one that I usually start with is, one, you can't quantify love. Like, however it is you want to talk about, but if he does this and that, you cannot quantify love. All you can do, and the closest thing that you can do to that, is try and measure out someone's expression of affection and try to equate it to someone having a lot of affection for you or very little affection for you. So you're mostly trying to measure shit out based on what it is that they do for you or what it is that they do to you. And contrary to what you might think, that is definitely not a good way to measure shit out. There are narcissists that will do the same things that a man who is really, really in love with you would do, all in the name of trying to gain your affection. There are guys that do not give too much of a shit but would buy a babe a car, and at the same time there are guys that love a woman with everything and then some, but because they're trying to be financially prudent would not buy her a car. Does that mean that the guy that bought her the car loves her more? That's not something that you can accurately point out. Like, that shit, as in, it's a very, very simple recipe to not actually understanding who loves who more, who loves who less, which is why nowadays most people will talk about quote-unquote caring or showing that you care less, of which the other reason why I'm not a pretty big fan of this whole belief system is the fact that it just doesn't help. Like, yes, fine, you might be the one that has the most control in a relationship, but at the end of the day, at what cost? Like, why would you choose to be with someone and not choose to care about them fully? Why would you choose to be with someone and then hold back on the affection because you want to have the most control? If that's what you have to do to get control, then are you really gaining from that relationship, or are you just trying to be in this safe zone where you don't want to get hurt? Like, at the end of the day, you choosing to love someone is a risk. And I think more people need to be told that choosing to love someone is a risk. The risk to reward ratio is always going to be different for everyone. And sometimes it'll work out, sometimes it doesn't. The most ideal goal that we have is that love will be reciprocated and the other person will feel the same for you, if not possibly more. However it is you want to look at that idea of quote unquote possibly more. But all in all, it is a risk. So why not go in expecting the best possible results instead of trying to manipulate your way in the whole idea of trying to calculate your way out of that risk? Of which, when you look at people that are into investing, and like investing probably isn't the best example, but I feel like I could just use it here. No matter how much calculatedness you can throw into it, you cannot escape the idea of risk. There is nothing that is a 100% guarantee in that situation. So imagine you trying to show that you care less about the person, and the other person, because they've gone through a similar situation and ordeal and they would not want to be there again, also tries to show that they care less about you. At the end of the day, who the hell benefits? Because the both of you are trying to show that you do not care about each other as much as you really do. And over time, as it breaks down, it's like the expectation is that one of you guys will fold. Now, imagine a situation where neither of you fold, and at some point you're like, you know what, this person doesn't really care about me, let me bounce. You've quite literally gotten rid of a particularly good relationship, or a relationship that had great potential, simply because you did not want to admit that you actually care about the person that you are trying to be with. If you are doing that, why invest in a relationship in the first place? And I feel like a lot of people come to this idea that your partner has to love you more than you love them, or has to care about you more than you care about them, so that you can be in quote unquote control of the relationship, because a bunch of people have been hurt and they are, just trying to deal with this trauma response by ensuring that they do not get hurt by that again. Like, there's so many people that have gone through a bunch of shit in relationships that they would not want to go through again. So this is their response to it. The whole idea that the person that you're with has to care about you more than you care about them, so that you are secure enough such that whether they choose to leave you or not, you're good. And if anything, you have the most control over the relationship. And while I can understand why you'd want to do that, at the same time, why would you want to be in a relationship where you have to hide the fact that you deeply care about your partner? Why be in a relationship like that? Like, it sounds very, very sucky in my opinion. I'd want to be with someone who I can be completely expressive with, or at least that I can be open with, and that I can show my affection to without it being used or weaponized against me, like the way this guy is talking. Like, why would I want to show affection if it's going to be weaponized? And honestly, like, when it comes to affection, when it comes to relationships, control isn't the main thing. It's you guys actually having some level of affection towards each other and reciprocating that affection so that you guys can grow from it. Control just basically puts you guys in a box where it's like, you guys could grow so much more, you guys could do so much more if you had a little less control, or tried to grab the reins a lot less, as opposed to how much you're doing right now. And like, a pretty good example of how this kind of counteracts development is, think of it as like from an employer and an employee. Okay, so let's say, for example, you're an employee, you're working for an employer, and you would want to make the most out of the current job that you have. And there's the employer, of course, that would want to milk the most out of you, the employee, so that they can grow their business and the business can be as profitable as possible, as is the typical goal for the average business person. Okay, so you decide to do the absolute least, and the employer, because they're trying to maximize on profits, gives you the absolute least. And then at the end of the day, you have two parties that are dissatisfied with each other, because the employer wants you to work more and the employee wants to be paid more money, and neither are coming to an agreement about the entire thing. So you would much rather have it that the employer looks for another employee, while that employee goes and looks for another employer that will treat them better. Like, how exactly does it benefit either side? Like, we're always going to be doing this sort of push and pull, this sort of negotiation thing with like employers and employees, but the most ideal situation is that you as an employee are giving the absolute best, at least within boundary, and the employer is giving you the absolute most within boundary. Like, that's the absolute most optimal situation for both sides. But the problem is, everyone is trying to get this unhealthy balance where either the employer is benefiting the most because they get to suck as much as possible from the employee for the least amount of money, and the employee is trying to get the absolute most for doing the least amount of work so that they can make the most amount of money at the end of the month. And it's just an unhealthy balance, which we probably should be breaking apart. Just the same way I am saying that in a relationship, the most optimal situation is where the both of you do express affection for each other at such a good level where it's not like one has to hold back their affection and the other one is in less of a control position. Like, it's not even about control, it's about affection and you guys growing from that affection and you guys choosing to be together. And especially even with the whole employer versus employee sort of juggle, you do seem to understand that, the whole thing of within boundaries is particularly important. So it's better to love someone fully and give your absolute best and care the absolute most for your partner within boundary, instead of you having to care less so that you can have control. Which kind of brings me to my conclusion of this entire thing. Like, we need to love, yes, we need to care. And I do believe that you need to show it as much as possible. Let the person that you want to be with know that you care about them and you do love them and you do have affection for them. But let it be within boundary as opposed to you giving less so that now there's this toxic hold that you have over them. Because I feel like it's easier to just love someone more and to love someone completely as opposed to holding back and showing that you care less so that you can have more control in that relationship. Although, then again, I could be wrong about this, just the same way I'm wrong about a lot of other things, so I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open. On IG, it is at the breaktime_podcast. On Facebook, it is at the breaktime podcast. And on X, it is at Bagaka the D. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.
But what I believe is that if you put a pastor and a prostitute in one room, one is likely to convert the other.